Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Shark Talk. If you're a shark enthusiast or you're just shark curious, then this is the series for you. Today I'm going to be talking to Jimmy Partington. Jimmy is a shark diving expert and he also has his own shark cage diving company, Shark Diving Experts, in Guadeloupe, where he takes his guests out to see some of the world's biggest great white sharks. Jimmy's going to be talking to us about those sharks, about how he free dives with them, and he'll also be answering some of your questions. So without any further ado, let's talk to the man himself right here on Shark Talk. Jimmy, hello. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for a chat. It's lovely to have you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a perfect time to do things like this now that we're all at home.
We're going to be talking to you about great white sharks, more specifically the great white sharks that you get in Guadeloupe. But I was thinking, before we go on to great white sharks, let's first talk about Jimmy, the man, because you've got an interesting story, really. I mean, you grew up in Jersey, I believe.
Yeah, a little island.
So how, I mean, it's a big question, really, but how did you get into sharks in the first place and to where you are now?
I was always interested in sharks, just like so many people are, you know, through TV and media and books as a child. Like you say, growing up in Jersey and in England, I hadn't seen a shark in real life, you know, the whole of my life. So I had this kind of thing where I wanted to travel the world and see sharks. So I went to Cape Town when I was 20 to cage dive with great whites, which a lot of people do. And what I realised through meeting people in Cape Town, the people that were working on the boats, was that these people were just normal people like me, but they happened to be born in Cape Town, you know, where there's sharks. So I immediately just saw them and thought, do you know what? If I was down here, I'd be doing this. So as soon as I made the connection that like I could actually do it, it was like just something went off, and that was it really. Then it was like this crazy tour of the world. I become a dive instructor to get in the water and start diving. We were diving with sharks. I worked in Thailand. I worked in Australia. And then eventually I got the call to go and work at Guadeloupe Island with great whites. And I've stayed with the great white ever since. And it's been 10 years now since I got that job of continuing to do it.
People are going to be out there thinking, how do I get involved with sharks? How do I work in, you know, amongst the ocean and things like that?
The email that I get most off the general public is, how do I do this? I want to be a marine biologist. And they think that I am a marine biologist, and I'm not. I found the path that I specifically wanted to do with them, and I honed in on that. And some people want to take photographs of them. Some people want to make films. You know, some people want to study them. For me, I just wanted to get out there and be on the boat and show people them and run these tours.
So that's Jimmy the man. Actually, one more thing before we move on to Great White Shark Central in this discussion. Tour operator, shark diver, you've been on Shark Week, you've facilitated TV shoots. So yep. You've got a hugely diverse experience, haven't you, really? And we'll touch on different bits of that throughout the conversation, so we might jump around a little bit, but I just wanted to get that out there, that there's a lot to you.
There's a lot going on, yeah. I never know what to put down on my tax return, let's put it like that. So, great white sharks,
Guadeloupe Island. Now, let's first of all just paint a little picture. So Guadeloupe Island, not to be confused with Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. Give us a little, you know, in a nutshell, what lends itself to great whites being there?
Well, it's off the coast of Mexico. It's around 220 miles from San Diego, California. And it's this remote location, obviously way offshore in the middle of nowhere, volcanic island, that for a number of months every year is a great white shark hotspot. And these huge animals congregate to, for reasons that we're still trying to figure out. But typically around August to December every single year, it's probably the best place on the planet to find these huge mega sharks. You know, we're talking the big ones, you know, 18-foot sharks, mature females. And sometimes when those big sharks are cruising around, even I'm like, that was just, this place is, what a special location.
What is bringing the great whites to Guadeloupe, especially these big mature adults?
Well, the theory is that they're going there to feed and they go there to mate. But no one knows that for sure yet. we don't see the babies there, so we only get the big ones. And then a lot of the big females have bite marks on them from mating, and they're not just scars; they're like fresh wounds. So you can see one shark 1 week, and then you'll see it a week later, and then its whole gills have been ripped open, and it's red, and it's like, oh, okay, that's fresh bite wounds. They're obviously stocking up on the food there as well, because obviously when they're pregnant, they might not hunt so much, so they're gonna need all their fat reserves. So I think they're gorging themselves on food, which there is a lot at Guadalupe. And then they're going off and doing this migration.
And you've got the big elephant seals there, haven't you? So the white sharks in South Africa are going after the Cape fur seals, and typically the young of the year, so the prey's different size. Yeah. How does that affect their predation technique?
They're ambush predators. So at Guadalupe Island, you have amazing visibility up to 100 foot. So it's very different to False Bay and Cape Town. So the seal can see the shark 100 foot away. So it's like, it's game over immediately. Like, it's like the shark knows it and the seal knows it. So we don't actually see predations like you do in Cape Town at Guadalupe Island for that reason. However, I have no doubt that they're going on. But what we think is happening is at Guadalupe Island, obviously the deeper you go, the darker it gets and the more the visibility goes down. And it is a lot deeper than, say, False Bay. So what we think is happening is pretty much exactly the same thing as Cape Town, but just instead of doing it at the top of the water, this predation and technique is going on much deeper. So the seals, for example, are swimming mid-water at depth. The sharks are even deeper still where they can't be seen. And they're doing the same thing and ambushing them that way.
With the bigger seals, the elephant seals, it's harder to deliver a lethal blow like they would to the smaller seals. So maybe it's a case of taking a big chunk and then, without being too gory about it, letting the prey bleed out and then coming back to finish it off.
Yeah, you're right. With the big elephant seals, they'll remove either the head or the lower portion and then let it bleed out. And there has been a few occasions where the animal has floated to the surface, and then we've seen the sharks feed off them and finish them off. But we've never seen the strike. We've never actually seen the strike.
So you've mentioned that you can't get down there to see these predations happening at depth, but you have had a very unique experience going to the depths of Guadalupe, haven't you? Tell us about that.
This was a couple of years ago. It's one of the best things I've ever done. If not, it probably is the best that I've ever done. This was a show for Shark Week for Discovery, and the whole show was about exploring the depth because that's where the behaviours are, So we hired at vast expense these submarines, which were incredible, and I got to go to 400 feet with the sharks, with great whites, which was just amazing. And my colleague Mauricio, he got to go to 1,000 feet, so he went even deeper than me. And he saw a great white in the darkness at depth.
At 400 feet, was it dark?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was dark. It was kind of murky at that point. We found a bit of the bottom that we could actually just sit down on, and we just kind of sat down there and waited for the sharks to come to us. And lo and behold, they really liked us because they liked all the the electronics coming off the submarine. Now, I was kind of hoping that if we saw one shark, that would be great for the show. But it turned out when I was down there, I must have 15 to 20 sharks all together. I was sitting down there for hours, but once they arrived, no matter where I looked, I could see one at all times. It was pretty amazing, actually. Now, when I talk about it, it kind of comes back.
I saw the footage and it was amazing. It was just, I can't imagine what that must have felt like. And the fact that it was in the dark as well adds a whole nother dimension, doesn't it?
And they got more and more comfortable. So when you first down there, you thought it was amazing. Just seeing a shark in the distance, you're like, oh my God, there's one. And you try and film it and it would just be like the tail. But by the end of it, by the end of the hours, the sharks were bumping the dome of the submarine and they were biting the hatch. Which was a bit concerning on the top of the submarine. They were really into it, and I was loving it because I was thinking, right, this is great. We're getting the most insane footage ever. So I was just enjoying the ride. I kind of forgot where I was for a second. But the pilot who I was with, he was worried about his equipment. So he was like, look, there came a point where he was like, well, we can't push it any further. You know, we're gonna have to go up. It really was like that. It was amazing.
Wow.
But it also just showed how tough that submarine dome is, because the sharks were bumping it. You know, when a shark bumps something, it's like when someone's reversing their car and they reverse into you. Like it's a hard hit, isn't it? You know what I mean? When a car hits you, and that's pretty much the equivalent. Whereas this dome could take it. It could take that kind of.
What
hit.
I love is that you didn't know that at the time. you knew that retrospectively, but even so, you're like 100% loving life, and your poor pilot's like, we're pushing the boundaries here.
yeah, it's true actually. I mean, I kind of like lost where I was for a second.
It's interesting there were so many down there, because presumably when you're in the top of the water column in the cages, you get a lot of sharks around the cage, but not as many as that at one time.
You know, I think the sharks are just visiting us when they're coming to the boat, whereas we're visiting them when we go into the bottom of the ocean, and they're way more comfortable down there. They swim alongside each other. The small ones are with the big ones. There's not so much of that hierarchy thing going on where one of them kind of gives way to the other. They're just way more. They're more like a bunch of reef sharks, you know, just intermingling on the bottom. But as soon as you sort of try and draw them up to the surface, all of a sudden they're like, there's this hierarchy and this weird, you know, posturing and displays that start going on. I think they're more vulnerable on the surface, and then there's food there as well, so that probably brings a different element into it.
Let's move on to the next topic, hot topic, diving without a cage with a great white shark. Not something to be undertaken lightly by any means. I mean, how do you even go about that? What made you decide to do it in the first place, and how did you go about it?
I didn't decide to do it. I was asked. So it was. I think that it can be done. It's been proved that it can be done many times. Like I say, I didn't choose to do it, which I think is important. But you do hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I would do that. I want to do that." But that, you know, that's like, you know, my niece who's 6 saying to me, I want to drive the car. You know, it's like, yeah, that doesn't mean that you should do it. So I think that there's a big thing for people to know within themselves what their capabilities are when it comes to something like that. And I think there's a huge credit should be given to people that say no. Yes. You know, because it's so easy to say yes. Oh, yeah, I'll do that, and blindly. But, you know, if someone was to turn around to me and say, do you know what, I don't think I fancy this, but then it got explained to them, well, I think you could, and, you know, and then you could go about it that way. That's kind of how it worked with me. Like, first time I ever did it, I was with some very experienced guys, some world record freedivers. Like, you know, couldn't have more experience in the water. And then on top of that, they were very experienced with great whites as well. They were actually working alongside the scientists out there. They were using their techniques, their freediving techniques, to tag sharks. And it was working out well for the scientist, because usually he would work from his little boat, and he would have to get a shark to come to the boat to tag it, which is often difficult to get them that close. Whereas the freedivers could just make up that little bit of extra ground. So they could be at the boat, and if the shark was, you know, 30 foot away, they could go to the shark and tag it, you know. So they were getting way more work done, and they were getting, you know, much more animals tagged. So that's what they were doing, and we were collaborating with them. And, you know, this came off years of already diving and already being comfortable in the water and already diving with other species of sharks. And then they said, look, would you like to come in and help us? I asked them, I said, well, what do you think? And they were like, yeah, absolutely, you can do it. You could do it. You know what I mean? And they knew me, I knew them, and that we knew our own capabilities. And we did it. And it was, and yeah, there was no, when I dunked my toe in the water, there wasn't any fear. And I think that's it. That's very important as well, because if I was scared, then I wouldn't do it, would I? So.
And there's a difference between fear and respect, you know. So you say you're not scared, but that doesn't mean that you're just going to blindly go into it. You respect them for the apex predators
they do give me a fright from time to time, but I'm not scared of a shark. But there are definitely moments where you have to be brave, you know, and if they're going to swim directly at you, for example, they might test you, you know, so you have to kind of hold your ground. And I'd be lying if in those moments you didn't come out with your heart, you know, going a little bit quicker than normal, you know, so that's part of it. And you probably need a little bit of fear as well to just, you know, again, like not push it, you know, with the sharks.
And how do you read the language of the shark to know what attitude they've got?
Yeah, I mean, well, of course, I'll just say first up straight away, you can never know exactly what a shark is thinking, but based on watching them so often, you know, I mean, I'll dream about sharks. I spend so much time in the water looking at them, and I spend so much time on the boat looking at them. Through watching them, I'll get to know, you know, what they're doing, how they're going to act. So there's already so much knowledge that's gone in. Me personally, I kind of live by like a rule book that I have in my mind when I do it. First of all, you've got to know whether or not to go in or not, because most of the time you don't. Most of the time it's like, nah, you know, you've got to find the right shark. And by the way, this conversation, I am simplifying this stuff down like a hell of a lot. It's like someone that is like I say, a dog behaviorist trying to explain the psychology of every moment and every twitch that the dog is going to do, and there's so many variables to this. I'm condensing this down to really try and simplify it. And you've got to know how to like then adapt, because it's going to change all the time. Your shark's going to do something else is going to change. A new shark might turn up, you know, you might change, you know, and that will then change the behavior of the shark. So you've got to know how to then like act and respond in the moment. But, you know, go on the side of caution. I mean, that's always what we do. We never push it. When we have done it, when we go and do it, it's usually very small moments. You know, it's not like we're just swimming around all afternoon with the sharks. We've chosen a very specific animal. We go in with that animal, and then if there's any types of red flags that would come up while we're in the water, then we don't wait around. You know, let's say for example that there's 10 red flags, and you know when it hits 8, 9, or 10. The animal's going to bite you. Okay, so what you do, you don't wait to get to 8, 9, or 10 flags. As soon as one flag comes up or two, you're like, I'm out. You know, because the sharks aren't going to go from 1 to 10 immediately. You know, they're going to let you know through body language and things like that things aren't going quite how you want it to. So as soon as you see that first stage, you're like, okay, no worries. There's a potential here that it could get worse, so I'm just going to remove myself. So you're already like so many steps ahead. It could all be going very well, but if you were then was to start swimming differently or panicking or kicking irregularly in the water, then the shark could be mellow, but now all of a sudden now he's interested in you. It's like running from a dog. You know, he's going to chase you. He wasn't really into you, but now you're doing something that he's interested in. So that was a big thing with these guys when they were like, look, if the shark comes up to you, you know, you've got to hold your ground, because if you back off, if you panic, you know, he'll keep coming, and then he might open his mouth. Whereas if you stand your ground, he's going to come right up to you, and then he'll veer away. He's testing you, you know. So that was hugely important. And of course, how can you teach that to someone? Very difficult. How are you going to know that person in that moment, when they got a 15-foot white shark coming nose to nose with them, isn't going to panic? I have actually seen it in action as well, twice, with a couple of freedivers where they've triggered a bad response in the great white. And they knew that they did it. There was one guy, he was swimming, he looked down, the great white was coming up at him, not in a bad way, it was just coming straight up underneath him. He kind of just like panicked, and the boat was close to him. So he just was like, shit, and he just tried to make it to the boat. And then the shark just went from like cruising to all of a sudden like, oh, what's up? And it swam up, actually kind of like, it did open its mouth, and it kind of like grazed or mouthed one of his fins, and then swam off. And it was just that trigger. It just was like, okay, what is that? You know, now you're going to act as prey.
Wow.
And another guy that I saw, he tagged one of the sharks, and the tag fell out. Didn't penetrate the shark. And the tag was falling down to the bottom of the ocean, and these are really like $1,000 tags. So in a moment, he just decided, do you know what? I'm just going to go and grab that tag. And he kind of broke his own rules. That was one thing that he knew he shouldn't have done. But he'd been doing it all afternoon, and he got confident or whatever, got lazy, and just decided, I'm just gonna get that tag, And then, sure enough, wasn't looking where he was going. Started swimming more erratically, and then another shark came up and intercepted him, and actually like slammed straight into him. It didn't open its mouth, but it was definitely triggered from his change in motion in mid-water. But most of the time, these are like these moments are very rare. Most of the time when we go in with them, they don't even want to come near us. Most of the time they will keep like a 20-foot distance from us, and it's actually very hard to get near them.
And I think that's what a lot of people end up being surprised about when they go out on these cage diving boats, is actually they've seen so many images of these sharks coming at the cages, mouths open, thrashing around. That's actually not their default. They're sort of slow, curious, exploratory. They're not. It takes a long time for them to work their way up to the cage. And moving on to very positive great white shark experiences, you've obviously been working Guadalupe for many, many years, so you must have some favourites, some particular sharks that you love.
When I first started working there was a famous shark called Shredder. This is going back now, and a lot of people that are watching this probably have even met this shark or know about this shark. He was like a legend out there. Because he was constantly around. All the boats knew him. He seemed to have a big personality. He was very photogenic. And when I was learning the job, he was around a lot. So I'm very fond of him, because they would send me down in our deep cages to try and fix things and to try and get comfortable with it. And it was like my training. And I was down there on my own. And it was just me and Shredder, and he would circle me and kind of look at me, and I would look at him, and for hours, so I formed like it was great kind of love for that shark early days. One of the more famous ones now is Lucy. She's a big female that we've seen for almost 10 years, almost every year. She's 16 foot, huge shark. We know her because the bottom of her tail is broken. So she's easy to recognise. We've got like the sort of generic ones, which are just there, making up the numbers. And then you have
the extras
ones that like they stand out from the crowd.
I can totally relate to that actually, because I remember going cage diving in Mossel Bay, and predominantly they're sort of younger sharks or teenage sharks, and they're testing things out, and they're a little bit unsure of themselves, and they often miss when they go for the seals. But I was diving 2 different days, and the first day this shark came up, and it had a massive blue, like a telltale blue paint smudge on its snout, and obviously where it had been hitting the boat or something, I assume.
On the boat.
Yeah, from the day before. And it was just, like you say, it stood out so much compared to the other sharks. He was so interested, constantly around the boat, coming right up to the cage, like properly sort of putting on a show, it felt like, for us. And then the second day he came back again, still had that blue on his snout. And I would love to know actually, a little bit more about that shark. But Blue Nose is what I've called him. Well, let's do some questions that I have been sent for you. So the first question is from Dan McCabe. And Dan says, I imagine many people find freediving with great whites incredibly brave, but what red flags are there, we've discussed this, that would make you stay on the boat? And what do you look for before making a call to enter the water?
Okay, so, well, 2 parts really. First part would be look at yourself, first. Don't even worry about what you're going to do that day. Are you feeling it? If I'm tired, or if I'm tetchy, or if I'm not in the right frame of mind, you just know in yourself, okay, don't be afraid to say no. Everybody can just say yes and please everybody, and it's all happy. But it shows greater character with generally everything in life if you can say, hey, no, because it's a harder choice to make. So if you know that you can do that, would be the first thing. And then you would have to look at the conditions, of course. That would be a given. You're gonna have to have good visibility. load of bad viz comes through or something like that, then obviously that's going to shut you down. You're not going to attempt to go in the water that day. And I do find that then there's a general energy with the sharks each and every day as well. Some day it's like they're all hyped up in general one day, and then they're all kind of mellow. With varying levels, of course, between them because of the personalities. But in general, I find there's a general mood in the water every single day as well. So if the sharks were displaying, like, if they were crazy on the baits, when we woke up one morning, obviously it would be like, not today, So you've got to that stage. So you've tested yourself, you've looked at the conditions, then you've had a look at the general mood in the water of the sharks. And then it's going to have to come down to the individual shark then that, and what you want, why you're going in as well. I mean, you have to ask yourself, like, what are you going in for? Are you trying to get a specific shot that you're not going to be able to get from the cage? So for that specific shot, what type of shark are you going to be looking for? You want a small one, big one that's going to come close to you? Are you looking for the more artistic shot where it's just, in the distance, or you want to swim alongside it? What are you trying to get here? So there's all these decisions that need to get made and evaluated. And then, yes, eventually you would choose the right shark, to go in with.
Cool. Well, I hope, Dan, that answered your question. Next question from Russ Hughes. Great white sharks could clearly swim anywhere in theory. How close have they been known to come to UK waters, and what would be likely to entice them to our area?
Well, first of all, there's no record of a great white here. However, there's like countless eyewitness reports of people saying that they've seen them. We don't know how credible they are or not. We think some of them might be, a lot of them probably aren't. However, if I had to stake some money on it now, I would say that yes, great whites have visited the UK, because I can't really find a reason for them not to. Like you said there, they can swim anywhere they want. We know that they do great migrations, across oceans. There was one shark that went from Cape Town to Australia and back in just over 90 days. So they do these great ocean migrations. The nearest one that got recorded, to my knowledge, was a little one got caught in a fishing net off France, off the Bay of Biscay.
I remember, was it Lydia, I think it was called, one of the great whites that was being tracked, and she kind of made her way over the North Atlantic ridge, and I thought, oh my God, it's going to happen. Like, I was constantly checking it, refreshing, but she didn't get any further than that. But
yeah, she wanted to go back. She didn't fancy coming to England. But yeah, like, it's a big ocean, and some of our sharks, they go to 3,000 or 4,000 feet deep. So they could be here, and how would you know? There's one shark at Guadalupe that was tagged. It's called Apache, big male, and he has a tag on his dorsal fin that only goes to the satellite, pings to a satellite when the dorsal fin breaks the surface of the water. Now, he only reads once or twice a year, so he's only breaking the surface once or twice a year. So most of the time, and I've already mentioned it with the abyss and the submarines, the animal's home is down on the bottom.
Yeah.
So they're probably cruising off our coastline, probably in the summer months when it does warm up a little bit. Maybe they're, if it was a good year for fish, and there's migrating fish stocks, everything moves together in the ocean.
And also, things are changing. The oceans are changing. The patterns of different animals are changing. So, like you say, if the great whites are following prey and prey movements are changing, who knows? Okay, next question from Amy Scott-Nicky. What makes you love working with sharks and going back to Guadalupe year after year?
The sharks, really, yeah. But it's also a lifestyle, which it's almost like escapism for me. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just so zoned in. Maybe I'm slightly addicted to it, perhaps.
Nothing wrong with that, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Okay, Melv23. Many shark species have been filmed breeding or giving birth, but never the great white. Why do you think this behaviour has been so difficult to capture on film?
I mean, a few reasons, maybe. I mean, first of all, physically for us to go to the places where they mate is proven to be very difficult. So that would be one thing. And then secondly, on their part, the great white, a little bit more solitary animal, and the areas that we're thinking that this is going on is a lot more difficult to get to. So that's pretty much the gist of it.
They like their privacy, and why not?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, Shia Raid. Sharks are quite skilled hunters and are very curious animals. Why is it that people are able to create such great bonds with them in the wild, and how is trust built between the diver and the shark without being hurt in the process?
So you have to be careful with certain words that you use when it comes to things like this. Ultimately, we're never going to know what that shark is thinking. And they are their behaviour is different, to say a mammal. They work more on instinct, rather than sort of problem solving. But you can see behaviours with them in small moments. So certainly when we're filming, there would be a relationship where maybe there would be a mutual respect. You're going to be able to behave in a way that it's going to keep its distance but still be comfortable with you in the water, sharing that zone of water or that particular part of water. So there's a sort of an understanding. The closest I've ever come to seeing a behaviour or a bond with a shark is when I was at the aquarium. And there was one shark in there called Striker. This was a grey nurse shark, the sand tiger shark. They call grey nurse sharks in Australia, but it's a ragged tooth shark, a sand tiger shark. And my boss, Chris, at the time, he would always do this thing with Striker where when he got into the water, if he positioned himself in a certain place, Striker would always do this certain swim with him, and she would come straight towards him. And he would do that thing, Keanu Reeves does in The Matrix, where he arches backward. And he would let Striker swim kind of over him. And when she did it, he would blow bubbles from his regulator up into her belly. And she would only do this with him if he stood a certain way. It was only that particular shark. And it was the same thing it was like the party trick.
I'm talking to another sharky person next week. And actually, we're going to be talking a lot about this because she works in an aquarium and she's had some amazing encounters. And she has a really unusual relationship with some of the sharks. And we're going to get into that and, what she puts it down to and stuff. But that's really...
you can learn a lot from the aquarium. I did.
Yeah.
I learned a hell of a lot. Yeah.
Okay, Joe Barella. Do sharks make noise when they are swimming or attacking?
The only interesting thing, to give you an interesting answer rather than just no, is a sound that is quite noticeable. The two sounds that I know that are unique to a shark. The first one is the sound of the splash when they go back in the water after they've breached. Now, I know that sound. Like, it's just the most unique sound. And the other one would be when sometimes they open their mouths and then they'll close their mouths, usually when they're going for the bait, and they've swallowed a load of water, but the water's in their mouth. And as they close their mouth, it just it has to all escape somewhere. And it's like a clapping noise, like as water's just trying to escape, almost like a vacuumed out, or it's like, when you jump in the water and you belly flop and it makes that crack. It's almost like that, it's like a water cracking noise.
Another thing that I might add, but it's not technically a sound, but sharks have been known to eavesdrop, or great whites have been known to eavesdrop on others. So if a kill's been made, any sharks that are in the area can detect it, and then they come in and see if they can exploit the kill if they're more dominant than the other. I've
been under the water and had great whites. I've seen them eat underwater, bite fish in half underwater, and it's really loud. It's like that cracking noise. and you can see it does definitely gets the other's attention.
Okay, next question from Finn. What does a shark's skull look like?
Well, they have quite simple skeletons, and they're made of cartilage, aren't they? So they don't really have like a skull. There's not actually much to it, If you look at the skeleton of a shark, it's sort of like a snake, really. You know what I mean? It's just got like kind of the main part running through it, and then it has its jaws as well. But the jaws aren't attached to the skeleton. It's just, technically it's attached through tendons and things like that.
That's why the shark.
Yes, that's why it can shoot it forward and things like that. So they don't have too much of a skeletal structure, actually, like compared to a mammal or something like that, or even of a bony fish, because they need to be so flexible and light in the water.
Okay, next question from Max Eady. Have you ever been attacked or bitten by a shark?
No, I don't think I have. Well, definitely nothing serious. Nothing serious. I've had my fingers nipped and things like that when we were feeding them, again in the aquarium. But I was wearing, chainmail gloves and things like that. So it wasn't anything too bad, like a little prick or something like that, but nothing, I wasn't losing a finger.
Final question from Carol Swatton. When diving, would sharks be attracted to any particular colour wetsuit, thinking it could be dinner?
They have done some studies on it, and the colour that we always talk about on the boat is yellow.
Yummy yellow, they say, don't they?
They call it yum yum yellow. We use yellow floats on our bait lines, and they often go for the yellow floats. They're curious animals, let's put it like that. So anything that is going to get their attention. It could be bright yellow, it could be bright green, but anything that's going to stand out, I think, is going to give you higher chance of a shark doing something with it. But it could just be coincidence, who knows?
Could just be bad luck. Cool, that's all our questions, and I have thoroughly enjoyed chatting. We've covered a lot.
This has been a perfect time to catch up, talk sharks, and I'm going to look forward to seeing who else you interview. I just hope that some people can watch this and enjoy it and learn something about it.
And it's an evolving show, so always interested to hear what people want to know about and what to discuss. But before we let you go, just finally, how can people get in touch with you? How can they find out about your trips?
Yeah, they can look me up. My business is sharkdivingexperts.com. There's no E in the experts, so we abbreviate to SDX, and that's if they want to, jump on one of our trips. But also a big following on all the social media stuff. I'm there on Facebook and Instagram. So if you want to fire me an email, or if you want to shoot me a message, you don't be like, oh, he's never going to respond. I always do respond, or try and respond to every single person. So just get in touch and try and make it happen for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for watching as well. Goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye.